Melissa, we can get started.
Okay, thanks. And so it looks like we are recording. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I know we had some technical issues yesterday, so I think we have some repeat dealers from yesterday. Unfortunately, yesterday there was so many technical problems. We were not able to record that session, but we do have the transcription of yesterday's session. So we did, so we are able to incorporate any of the new questions that were asked yesterday, and we can incorporate that into our FAQs. We are recording now, so we did verify that. So let me just start off for those of you that don't know me or I don't know you. I'm Melissa Avanego. I'm the Assistant Director for the Bureaus of Air Monitoring and Mobile Sources. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. This is DEP's question and answer session for the Advanced Clean Truck and Low NOx Omnibus regulations. This meeting is being recorded. And like I said, this is to record the concerns and questions that we hear during the session. This is the second of 3 sessions that we're holding this week, where we will give a brief overview of the regulations with the intent of clarifying confusion that we have heard from the dealers. We will not be discussing the merits of the regulations. Currently, we have web pages dedicated to each of these rules, and we'll be discussing them today. Each page provides a summary of regulations, a link to the adopted rule language, along with frequently asked questions. Should we receive any new questions today, we will add those questions and answers to the documents we already have posted online. Yesterday, we had our first Q&A session. There were many comments, concerns, questions surrounding the cost of electric vehicles and the lack of public infrastructure. So in an effort to be responsive and to make the remaining sessions informative and worthwhile, we will be providing an additional presentation today following the regulatory summary. The presentation we will give you a small glimpse of what New Jersey is doing in the medium and heavy duty space regarding our electrification efforts. We understand that it takes time to build out the charging infrastructure throughout the state and the region. We also understand that there aren't electric vehicle options for every medium heavy duty vehicle right now, but every year that passes, more and more electric vehicle options become available. In an effort to be efficient and cognizant of everyone's time, we did set that everyone's microphone is muted, but that seems to be another technical hiccup. But the intent is to have everybody type their questions in the chat, and we'll answer that way. Again, yesterday during our first session, we did go over time, and I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'd like to thank NJ Carr for helping us distribute the information on these sessions to all of their dealers. Joining me today is Monica Miranda, who will aid in any troubleshooting of the technical issues. Rob Shell, who's our mobile source regulatory expert. Tom Dvorak is an expert in all things mobile sources. And many of you may know Jeff Cantor, who oversees the diesel inspection program. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob, who will give you an overview of the regulations.
Good morning. Let me start out with sharing a PowerPoint here. Give me a sec. Okay. Oops, hold on. Go back to the beginning here. Sorry. All right. Make sure, can everyone see the slides in front of them? It should be one slide you're seeing.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Just make sure it's working. Every day is a little different, it seems, with the technology, but here we go. All right, so my intent here is just to give you some background on the regulations and mainly the differences between them. First, we'll start out with some basic definitions and acronyms so we're clear as to what we're talking about. When we use the terms light duty and heavy duty, we're talking about the break point of a GVWR of 8,500 pounds. So all of these regulations deal with the universe of heavy-duty vehicles. So that's Class 2B through Class 8. We'll also make frequent mention of CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board. That's the government entity in California that regulates their motor vehicle emissions and promulgates all their regulations and does all the work with the manufacturers. We'll also make some mention of the Clean Air Act, and we'll make some comparisons between zero emission vehicles and internal combustion engine vehicles. So if we talk about ZEVs and ICE, that's what we mean. And we make reference to New Jersey Administrative Code where our regulations reside, but you don't really need to worry about that too much. All right, so a little bit of a backstory here in terms of how we got here. When the federal government passed the Clean Air Act in 1970, they recognized that California had already started to require more stringent vehicle emission standards. Because California has severe air quality problems, they were allowed to continue that practice, but the feds also established their own vehicle emission standards. So in recent amendments of the Clean Air Act, there's an allowance for states that are not California to adopt California emission standards. But the qualifier there is that they must maintain identicality with California so that you don't create a third car or, in your case, a third truck. So you have California standards and federal standards, but nothing else. We don't want to create a New Jersey engine requirement or something unique that manufacturers would have to comply with. So in 2006, New Jersey adopted California's vehicle standards for light-duty vehicles, all the stuff under 8,500 pounds. That was effective in 2009. Similar to the two regulations that we're going to talk about today for heavy-duty vehicles, it required stricter emission controls and tighter emission standards on ICE vehicles, and an increasing percentage of ZEVs needed to be delivered for sale. So again, it's similar to what we're talking about for trucks moving forward. So over the last few years, we've adopted similar programs for heavy-duty vehicles. And as has been the case on light-duty vehicles, New Jersey is not alone in this process. For the Act and Omnibus heavy-duty standards we're going to talk about today, we're joined by 9 other states plus California. As you can see from the list here, it's both East Coast, West Coast, and some stuff in the middle, like New Mexico and Colorado, for example. All the states that have adopted these programs, the heavy-duty programs, represent about 26 to 27% of the national market share of heavy-duty vehicles. So it's not trivial. It's not just 10% or just one state. And there's other states that are possibly interested in going this route as well. So this isn't necessarily a final list of where we're at. So 2 programs we've adopted, and I want to make clear that these are 2 separate programs because a lot of the questions we've received over time have been sort of smeared and confusion between these programs. So I want to make sure we understand what regulates whom and what. So the first regulation is called Advanced Clean Trucks. That requires manufacturers of heavy-duty vehicles to deliver increasing quantities of ZEVs for sale to New Jersey. It specifically regulates the vehicle manufacturers, not the dealers. I don't mean to say that dealers aren't affected in some way. They are, but the regulation is specifically on the manufacturers in terms of who has to comply. The other regulation has a really huge long title, but we shorten it to NOx Omnibus and generally just call it Omnibus. This one is essentially what you'd call the tailpipe standards for new ICE vehicles and engines that have to be sold in New Jersey. This directly affects dealers and anybody buying or selling vehicles in New Jersey. Now, when I go into them individually here, I'll talk about the requirements and when they're effective. So for the most part, these programs are mutually exclusive and don't overlap or interact. So one is a ZEV requirement for manufacturers. The other is a CARB certification requirement for vehicles and engines. So now we'll try to go into them individually. So first is the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation. We proposed this in the spring of 21. We had a formal public hearing. We had a formal public comment period. and we adopted it in December of 2021. And the adoption included extensive comment and response to all of the comments that were received as public comments or during the public hearing. So it's, as Melissa said, our intent is not to debate the merits of these rules. We did that 3 years ago. So this rule is effective January 1st, 2025 for model year 2025 and newer vehicles. So this is coming up very quickly. But we'll talk about, in terms of compliance, what that means timing-wise. So who is regulated? The motor vehicle manufacturers are directly regulated. They have to comply with delivering for sale to New Jersey zero-emission vehicles. So what does it require? It requires the manufacturer to deliver for sale increasing percentage of ZEVs each model year, maxing out in model year 2035. So we're coming in at model year 2025. Now remember I said we have to adopt California's programs identically. So California's program starts in model year 24. But when we join the program, we can't join in 25 at 2024 numbers. We have to join at 2025 numbers to maintain identicality with the industry. So, our initial starting percentages will be 7% in class 2B and 3, 11% in class 4 to 8, and 7% in class 7 and 8 tractors. I added a piece of information here that I didn't have yesterday to give you some context setting. On the right, you can see a pie chart here. I apologize if the numbers aren't too readable. I added this very quickly this morning, but New Jersey has a population of about 500,000 heavy-duty vehicles. That is vehicles over 8,500 pounds. It's only about we have a total population of about 7 million vehicles, but about 500,000 of those are heavy-duty. As you can see from this pie chart, about 60% of them are class 2B and class 3. So a huge portion of the heavy-duty vehicles in New Jersey are on the lighter side of the spectrum. A lot of the discussion yesterday, I think, focused on class 8 long-haul tractors, which is probably a small piece of the 15% wedge up here. So, we don't want our discussion to be too derailed by talking about a really small sector of the population when all of the heavy-duty vehicles encompass a much wider range of vehicle classes. Going back to the sales percentage requirements. Someone wasn't muted there. You'll note that in each of the classes going out to 2035, which is the end point, and beyond, which is the end point of these regulations, nothing reaches a 100% sales requirement. On class 2B and 3, it maxes out at 55%. 75% on class 4 through 8, and only 40% on class 7 and 8 tractors, because CARB recognizes that for some of the tractors, particularly the long haul tractors, they're going to be the most difficult to electrify. So we recognize that, CARB recognized that going into this. They didn't do this blindly without consulting with industry. So we know that. So in no case do any of these max out. So there will always be applications where there will be diesel or gasoline vehicles filling some of these roles, probably mostly diesel in this category. So we know that, we recognize that. So in no case do you have to sell 100% zero emission vehicles. That's just not how this regulation works. Another good point I want to make here is manufacturers have a lot of flexibility in meeting the Act requirements. I know a lot of discussion has been centered around the sales mandates that manufacturers are placing upon their dealers. But the manufacturers have a lot of internal flexibility that we're not sure they understand or they're exercising yet. They can bank credits for future use, including earning early credits beginning model year 24. And we've had some requests to accrue those early credits. They can trade and sell credits between manufacturers, and this is very, very common in the light duty sector, particularly among vehicle manufacturers that accrue no deficits because they only make electric vehicles, and you probably know who I'm talking about there. They just sell credits to manufacturers who don't make electric vehicles. So there are ways for manufacturers to comply that don't involve sales mandates. In addition, there are weight class modifiers. So if they sell several Class 8 tractors, they get 2.5 times the credit than, say, a Class 4 to 5 vehicle. So they can I'm sorry, someone is still not muted here. We're getting some feedback. There we go. Thank you. So they can get additional credit for the heavier vehicles. So it's not an exact one-to-one. So if they sell a bunch of, excuse me, Class 4 vehicles and they accrue those deficits, they only have to sell less than half as many Class 8 tractors to make up the deficit with credits. There's an ability to move some of these credits between weight classes. Like I said, you move some of these around so they can meet deficits in one category with credits from another category. We're working with CARB and other states to consider pooling options so that they'll be able to pool their credits across multiple states. And there's debate on whether that may or may not include the state of California, which has a lot of electric trucks. So again, if that becomes a possibility, the manufacturers could meet their obligations by selling into states that are heavily electrified, and then they don't have to sell as many vehicles in other states. They'll still have to sell some, but not as many. In addition, last summer, CARB signed what's called the Clean Truck Partnership with the trucking industry to give them some additional regulatory flexibility. And there are a number of key points they brought out there, but one of the big ones is that, a few of the big ones I'll mention, is that they modified the requirement for, instead of placed in service, they only have to deliver for sale. And that makes it easier for the manufacturers to meet their obligations. As a dealer, it means you don't have to sell the vehicles, but the manufacturer has to say, yeah, I delivered it to a dealer in New Jersey. We didn't sell it yet, but it's there. It would be easier for compliance if it were placed in service, but it's easier for the manufacturer. So this was a give back to the manufacturers to make it easier for them. In addition, they expanded the makeup period to complete their credit requirement from 1 year to 3 years. So if you recall here, I said, we're starting in model year 2025. We won't begin to look at truing up those credits until mid calendar year 26, and then they have 3 years, which takes us to 28 to actually true up those credits. So if you're thinking, oh my goodness, January 1st, these manufacturers all of a sudden have to meet these sales requirements, they have some time to ease into this process and to make up the credit balance. It's not quite that straightforward. All right, so there are some exemptions for this program, and there are more exemptions under the other program, but this is just exemptions in terms of vehicles that manufacturers don't have to worry about electrifying. And that is true emergency vehicles, which are basically police vehicles, fire vehicles, and ambulance and rescue vehicles, and military tactical. For some reason, this question always comes up. No, snowplow trucks are not actually emergency vehicles. They're just dump trucks used to plow snow. They are not in anybody's regulations are they considered to be emergency vehicles, nor do we plan to. So that always comes up. So how do we determine compliance? On the light duty side, we've been using CARB has created a portal that all of the motor vehicle manufacturers use to report in their sales of vehicles, both ICE vehicles that generate deficits and ZEVs that generate credits. And the system trues up and figures out what their deficits are and whether they met them or not. So this on the heavy duty side, the system hasn't been set up yet. CARB did go through one iteration that didn't quite work out, so we're still working through this with CARB, but the intent would be to have a similar data system. So the manufacturers will report their sales information into a data system, and it would determine their compliance. So it's fairly automated. The states aren't going to have to keep track of numbers on paper or spreadsheets or anything like that. At least initially we may, but eventually go to an automated database. This has worked successfully very well in the light duty sector. So I'm going to pause for a second, pause the presentation, and jump out to our web page where you can learn about these regulations and some of our FAQs. So let me stop sharing this and then I will share our website for a moment. Over to here, and where is it? Sorry, I know I have this open, but I'm trying to find the share button for what I have open. Look at this one. Okay, there we go. So here's our website for the Advanced Clean Trucks rule. It's the presentation, which we can give you the actual link here, but it's on the Stop the SOAT website. This has a link to the regulation itself, and it has a link to a set of frequently asked questions put together by a regional organization called NESCOM that we work with, Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management. So here are some of these compilation of FAQs are based on questions we've been asked to date prior to the last few days. So applicability and effective date, we've already discussed, model year 25 for effective January 1st, 2025. How do the requirements differ from the California Act program? Well, for the most part, they don't, because like I said, we have to maintain identicality between programs. But we do start in model year 25 instead of 24. But we have to insert in where California is at 25 to maintain identicality. And we started our early credit generation with model year 24 instead of model year 21, just because California was further along with maturity in electrification than we were, and we made a policy decision to start with 24, corresponding to a certain level of certification that CARB was undergoing with electric powertrains. So are there any exemptions? Yep, we talked about emergency vehicles and military tactical vehicles. Do dealers have any responsibility under Act? Essentially, no. This is a manufacturer compliance obligation. It does not regulate dealers. There are no penalties against dealers for anything. It doesn't regulate dealers. So I have some questions about sales here. So can a New Jersey dealer sell a heavy-duty ZEV to an out-of-state purchaser? The short answer is yes, but how the manufacturer gets credit for that might depend on how it was ordered. If the vehicle was delivered to a New Jersey dealer for sale with the intent to sell it in New Jersey, and then someone rolls over the border and said, "Oh, hey, you got an electric truck on your lot. I want to buy one," and they buy it, they might still get credit for it, the manufacturer, I mean. If, on the other hand, this is an order process and someone from out of state ordered it through a New Jersey dealer, but it was never intended to be delivered to New Jersey, then the manufacturer might not qualify for the credit for that because it really wasn't a delivery to New Jersey. So do heavy-duty fleets or vehicle owners operators have any responsibility? No. This program regulates the vehicle manufacturers. There are no requirements that you have to buy an electric trucks. There are no requirements that you have to sell electric trucks. This is that the manufacturers have to deliver them for sale to New Jersey. Can you purchase a heavy-duty vehicle outside of New Jersey? Yes, with a caveat that I'll get into in the next program when we talk about the other half of the rules here. The ACT program itself, in terms of electric vehicles, doesn't mandate that anyone has to only buy vehicles in New Jersey. They could still buy vehicles outside of New Jersey. Are used vehicles affected? Nope. It says no impact on used vehicles whatsoever. This only affects new manufacturers who make new vehicles for heavy duty vehicles for sale in New Jersey. It doesn't affect used vehicles at all. And we talked about how compliance would be determined through a database system that's still to be constructed, in process. And enforcement and penalties don't affect you. As it says here, dealers, fleets, owners and operators are not subject to any penalties. So these are only penalties for the manufacturer. So not really relevant to you folks. So stop sharing that. I'm going to go back to my presentation. Oh, and it went back to the beginning. Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, so now we'll talk about the other half here, the NOx Omnibus, or what we just call the Omnibus regulation. So this was proposed in 2022. We went through a public hearing. We received public comments into early 23. And again, we adopted this in the spring of 23. Our adoption document, again, is extensive public comments that are responded to with formal comments. Formal responses, sorry. This program is effective January 1, 2027, with model year 27 and newer vehicles and engines. Now, I'll get into some nuances of what I mean by that in a minute. Who is regulated? Anybody. Almost anyone who sells, leases, imports, delivers, offers for sale, offers for lease, any vehicles or engines intended for use in New Jersey, new heavy duty vehicles or engines intended for use in New Jersey. Again, only new vehicles and only heavy duty. So basically anybody who's buying or selling a vehicle in New Jersey is impacted by this regulation. So this is kind of an everybody thing. So what are the requirements? All heavy duty vehicles and engines sold in New Jersey as of the applicability date must be certified by CARB. Now, that means CARB issues an executive order that says a particular engine family meets California emission standards. Now, like I said, we've been doing this with light duty vehicles since 2009. You may have heard the term, oh, New Jersey is a California car state. Yes. So now New Jersey will also be a California truck state as of 2027. That's essentially what this means. So it's similar to what we do on the light duty side. There are a lot of exemptions because this is a sales issue as opposed to just a manufacturer requirement. So we have to have exemptions for vehicles that move around in different ways. So we still have the same exemptions for emergency vehicles and military tactical vehicles. There's an exemption that doesn't apply to medium duty passenger vehicles because medium duty passenger vehicles are included in the light duty regulations, our ACC2 program for California requirements for emissions and zero emissions vehicles. Medium duty passenger vehicles are vehicles in that class 2B range that are manufactured and sold as complete vehicles, but they're strictly for passenger use. Some common examples I gave is some of the heavier Chevy Suburbans are over 8,500 pounds. And we've even had some like Bentleys and Rolls Royces that are in that category. So it's a very small category, but they're not regulated by Omnibus because they're not really heavy duty trucks in a conventional sense. They're passenger vehicles and they're covered under the light duty program. Heavy duty ZEVs are not regulated because, well, they're zero emission vehicles. So there's no engine standards to deal with. Rental vehicles that are registered outside of New Jersey aren't covered. Vehicles transferred by inheritance or court decree aren't covered. Again, if someone passes away and you inherit a new truck from someone and it's passing by inheritance, but it doesn't meet California requirements, it would be exempt because it's transferred by inheritance. The vehicle is registered in another state by a resident that moves in the state. Again, someone moves into the state and brings a vehicle with them, they're not prohibited from bringing the vehicle they own with them. vehicle transfers between dealers, and vehicles sold exclusively for being wrecked or dismantled off highway. So a lot of it, and these exemptions are common on the light duty program as well. So these aren't newly created exemptions. We have a long history of using these exemptions. So how is compliance enforced? So this one's a little significantly different than the other program. The way we do this on the light duty side is when a new vehicle is registered or initially titled, sorry if I misspeak between registration and title. When a vehicle is initially titled at the Motor Vehicle Commission, you have to present the manufacturer's statement or certificate of origin, the MSO. That shows whether the vehicle is CARB certified or not. In the case of light duty vehicles, if it comes in and it's not CARB certified, motor vehicles may reject it. So that's kind of how this goes. I'm sorry, just interrupted here. There's give me one brief second. There's somebody at my door. I'm sorry. I have to. Melissa, do you want to take this for a second? I don't know why there's somebody at my door here, but it's somebody I know. So give me a sec.
Maybe we can, while we wait for um, Rob to come back, you want to focus on the chat. There's been a number of questions that have been coming in through the chat, and Tom has graciously been going through and answering them. Oh, there's Rob.
Okay, I'm back. Totally sorry about that. Someone was here from the National Weather Service. I operate a weather station here, so he got the wrong day to show up to do some work. So totally sorry about that. My fault. All right. So the enforcement mechanism for this is like I said, is the same through light duty. So there's a possibility if you sell a vehicle that's not CARB certified, again, in the right range that we're talking about in terms of model year, or someone brings in a brand new, buys a vehicle somewhere else and brings it in and it's brand new and they try to register it, motor vehicles may deny them titling. So that's how this gets enforced. And that does happen on the light duty side. It's very rare since we've been doing it since 2009. All right, let me go to the frequently asked questions, because then I'll explain a little bit about the difference between vehicle and engine certification and some of the other stuff that's covered here. Give me 1 second. Let me stop sharing that. And then share the other thing here. Okay. All right, so we have also on our Bureau website a webpage for the NOx Omnibus program. We don't have an FAQ from NESCOM yet because that's still a work in progress, but we have our FAQs that we have otherwise received to date. So we've talked about the applicability and effective date. It's starting with model year 27 and newer on January 1st, 2027. How do our requirements differ from the California program? Essentially, they don't. They don't at all. We have the same exemptions, same requirements. We already discussed the exemptions. This is the same list as before. So do dealers have any responsibility under Omnibus? Yes. Dealers have to ensure that the vehicles they sell are CARB certified. So this is kind of a hard requirement. Yeah, they have to be CARB certified. Can a New Jersey dealer sell a heavy duty vehicle to an out-of-state purchaser? Yes, but the vehicle you sell has to be CARB certified. Vehicle or engine you sell has to be CARB certified. It doesn't matter if the purchaser is from a non-CARB state where they're like, I'm from Ohio or whatever. I don't have to have those California engines. Just give me a federal engine. If you're a New Jersey dealer and you're selling it the transaction is occurring in New Jersey, you can only sell them a CARB certified engine. You can't sell them a federal engine. Well, again, once this requirement becomes effective in 27. So if you're a purchaser of heavy duty vehicles, can you go outside of New Jersey and purchase a vehicle or engine? The short answer is yes, but if it's new and you go to register it and it's not CARB certified, your registration might, your titling might be rejected because it's not CARB certified. So yeah, you might go shopping for a truck outside of New Jersey, but in order to title it here, it's got to be CARB certified.
Like somewhere else.
Do heavy duty fleets or vehicle owners have any responsibility on an omnibus? Yes, you have to ensure that all vehicles you're buying are CARB certified. Sounds pretty straightforward. Used vehicles are not affected, and our regulations define used vehicles as those with an odometer reading of 7,500 miles or more. A lot of states use this definition of 7,500 miles because it's a commonly used cut point. Anything over that is considered used and is not part of this program. So, if you're selling a used vehicle, it doesn't need to be CARB certified. If it's a model year 2030, I don't care what model year it is, but it's, when this program is fully in effect, if you're selling a used vehicle, it doesn't need to be CARB certified. It's just considered a used vehicle transaction. So how is compliance determined and enforced? We discussed that. It has to do with the initial titling of the vehicle at the Motor Vehicle Commission. That's where they would block it if it's not CARB certified. Do manufacturers have any responsibility? Well, like the ACT program is all manufacturer responsibility. This program is mostly dealer responsibility. However, the manufacturers still are on the hook to comply with the California warranty and recall requirements. Because CARB certified vehicles usually have more stringent warranty and recall requirements than federal vehicles. That's been the case in our light duty sector. So your vehicle owners are eligible to take advantage of the California warranty on CARB certified vehicles and engines here. So, okay, let's get into the vehicle versus engine certification and how the model year works with engines. Because we know it is very common for vehicles of a model year to have a previous model year engine. So in this case, we're starting up the program in 2027. So if you're selling a model year 27 vehicle after January 1st, 2027, but it has a 2026 engine in it, this rule would not apply. It could still be a non-CARB engine. So if what we're looking toward in terms of certification is whatever CARB certifies. In most cases, they certify the engine, but I'll get to that in the next paragraph. Some vehicles are certified as complete vehicles, but we would look toward the engine certification. Now, I doubt if you'd be selling a model year 28 vehicle with a model year 25 engine or something like that. So this is probably only going to be an issue in the first year or two of implementation. But yeah, we would go by whatever is certified. So if it's a 27 model year vehicle, but you got a 26 engine, it's fine. It doesn't need to comply with these regulations yet, if that makes sense. The difference between vehicle and engine certification. Certain classes of vehicles, mostly the lower classes, as you would imagine, are certified as complete vehicles rather than engine certification. So most light duty vehicles are certified as complete vehicles, even though they might be incomplete and might be modified with utility bodies and things like that, particularly in the truck range, the lighter truck range. But we go by whatever CARB certifies. Most heavy duty engines are certified as engines, not as complete vehicles. But that's why everything in this regulation and everything I'm saying, I keep saying vehicles and engines, vehicles and engines, vehicles and engines, because it could be either one. In most cases, it's probably engines for you guys. Let me stop sharing this. Go back to my presentation. And yep, it went back to the beginning again. Sorry about that. Not sure why it does that. All right, we have a lot of resources to talk about how we're promoting heavy-duty ZEVs and charging and infrastructure. I'm not going to go into these details because Melissa has a new presentation to go into a lot of that. The information is here. It's out on the web, on our website, but I'm going to pause and we can either answer questions or turn this over to Melissa, depending on what she'd like to do.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump right into the presentation since we only have 15 minutes left in our session. We can obviously stay on for a little bit longer, but I want to ensure that we get through this next presentation. Rob, can you see my full screen presentation?
Yes, I can. I can see it.
Okay. So, like I mentioned before, yesterday, there were a lot of concerns that were voiced, about the price of electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure. So in an effort to be a little bit more organized in how we answered or how I answered yesterday, I'm hoping that the following presentation is beneficial to you all. And we will share this presentation because it should be helpful to you all and to your customers. Okay, so there is a lot of teamwork and collaboration that needs to take place anytime we move to new technology. Um, we continuously and regularly have conversations with the federal government, other state agencies, regional organizations. The nonprofit organizations have been very helpful with facilitating conversations and providing information as far as technical and informational resources. And then the public and private entities, partnerships, they're really important as well. I've worked with a lot of dealers through our grant program, and the feedback of the program is really helpful. Oh, I don't know what happened. Okay, so as far as collaboration, there's a lot of federal funds out there for a number of programs. The Department of Energy had funded two East Coast charging programs. We're fortunate in New Jersey to be part of them. So the first program is the National Grid. So it's the Northeast Electric Highway Study. So this project will forecast electric charging demand at traffic stops along the freight corridors. It includes Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So this is to help, give a blueprint of what a large scale deployment of EV charging would look like. And then when we focus from New Jersey and going south, CalSTART is conducting the East Coast Commercial ZEV Corridor. And this project will launch an intensive strategic planning effort to spur the deployment of medium heavy duty ZEV infrastructure on the I-95 freight corridor from New Jersey down to Georgia. So part of this, there's a lot of entities that are involved, like I said, public, private, government, and our utilities. We recently, New Jersey was awarded CPRG funding. It's just under $250 million for public freight truck charging infrastructure. I think, okay, thank you for muting. So there'll be approximately 20 to 24 sites throughout these 4 states. It was a coalition effort that New Jersey led and include Maryland, Delaware, and Connecticut. Communication is key, right? We have a lot of programs here in New Jersey, whether it's DEP or BPU or EDA. There's grant programs, there's technical resources. We want to share out our successes to ensure everybody is aware of everything that we're doing because it will, so it could be beneficial to everybody. So lots of information on our websites, but it's only effective if we reach out to everybody, to NJ Car members, whether it's the dealers or our grantees or anybody else who would be interested in this funding, government, private entities. Okay, BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, had a straw proposal, and they came up with a medium heavy duty utility program draft framework that was published in 2023. We're hoping for this to be finalized by the end of this year. And so this program will prioritize the private investment while having the utilities involved in publicly accessible medium heavy duty fleet charging in overburden areas. So right now the utilities have make ready programs for the light duty vehicles. And so, this is what we're waiting for to really help the medium and heavy duty infrastructure. Another program that we just launched here at DEP for 3 years will be focusing on fleet advisory services. CalSTART is our partner on this. And this is just, another way that we're trying to focus on vehicle electrification. We're looking at smaller fleets, fleets that have 20 vehicles or less. Those smaller fleets aren't always aware of our grant programs. They don't always have the resources to get the information on the electric vehicles or what it takes to electrify their fleet. So this program, like I said, we're partnering with CalSTART, and they have a subcontractor that has an electrician located here in New Jersey. So it's a free program. And we're taking about 15 fleets a year that we will help provide them with an electrification plan, give them the options of looking at their fleet to see what their electric options are, and have somebody do a site walk of their facility to help them with the infrastructure piece. I previously mentioned there's a lot of medium heavy duty incentives out there. DEP, EDA, and BPU all have grant programs, whether it be for the charging stations or for the vehicles themselves. So there's a lot of money out there. And then for the first time, the IRS has federal tax credits for clean commercial vehicles. So this is really important because, like I said, for the first time, the municipalities, local governments, and school districts that don't pay taxes are eligible for this clean commercial tax credit for up to $40,000 on medium and heavy duty vehicles. And that's per vehicle. So that really helps make this a little bit more affordable. Okay, so digging a little bit more into New Jersey's medium heavy duty grant programs. So DEP started our focus on medium and heavy duty electrification in about 2019 when we used the VW settlement funds. That settlement had prescribed equipment and vehicle mitigation categories. Nationwide, we saw many states moving to electric vehicles. So that really, to me, was the big push. And that's where we saw, a lot of states putting all of their VW funding for electrification. We started our first round of VW funding, and we focused on school buses and trucks. And so since that time, since 2019, we've awarded over $310 million for vehicle electrification projects. So you can see some of the pictures here of projects that we funded. Then to continue our efforts, we use some state funding using RGGI funding, and we really focused on vehicles operating in residential areas, so garbage trucks and school buses. And we focus on the municipalities and the school districts who installed the charging stations at their own fleet locations where they would charge overnight. And so, these types of vehicles won't really use public charging because they'll have the chargers at their fleet. So in the 5 years since we've been providing grant funds for vehicle electrification, we're starting to see more and more options out there. There's, people can choose more than one type of garbage truck or school bus. There's shuttles, there's last mile delivery vans. So we've seen, many options pop up pretty quickly now. But we know that transition takes a long time, and that there aren't, electric options for every vehicle. But while the options continue to come onto the market and while we build out the public charging infrastructure, we focus on the vehicles that have electric options now and the ones that make sense. So there aren't, long haul Class 8 trucks right now. And while we wait for the infrastructure to happen throughout the state, the public infrastructure, and through other states, we focus on the pieces that we can, that are viable, like the last mile delivery trucks. We've seen lots of Amazon trucks out there, delivering out to your house, and they're electric. We funded some last mile delivery trucks with like IKEA. So those vehicles are out there, and that's, what we're focusing on now. Let's see, like I said, we spent a lot of time over 5 years working on these grant programs, and we know feel your frustration. It hasn't been easy. We've learned a lot. The constructive criticism that we hear from everybody is beneficial as we shape our grant programs. But like I said, I think we moved the needle a lot. At the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see our first grant-funded electric street sweeper. So I was out there last week to see the street sweeper in Bay Head, which is a lovely shore town. To talk to the mayor, who was excited to get the funding, and to talk to the driver, who says he no longer has to wear a mask when he's in the cab, to do his job. Those are the things that are really important, and we can see that we're making a difference. So these vehicles are coming, and we're seeing more and more of them. So, when I look at we have over 1,000 electric vehicles that we funded over the last 5 years. It's a tremendous effort, and it takes time. But in the next year or two, I can't even imagine what we'll see in the different types of vehicles. One of our other programs is the electric school bus program. The electric school bus law dedicates a total of $45 million over 3 years. Next week, we'll be announcing the awards of our first round of funding. But even prior to the law, we have funded over 200 electric school buses. So like I said, we've started this back in 2019 with our VW funding. There's lots of resources out there, and this is where the teamwork and the collaboration come into play. There's a number of nonprofits, government organizations that provide technical and information informative information about vehicle types and charging. There's a lot of information out there. We have these resources out on our website. So hopefully they're helpful to you as the dealers. They're helpful, information you can give out to your customers on, where they can go to get more information. And then likewise, here's some additional resources for local governments. And let's see what else do I have here. Okay, so here's our local government information. And then lastly, here's our social media information. If you haven't liked or joined or any of that on our social media or our listservs, please do that. That's where we get our announcements out on funding or other opportunities, whether it's through the federal government or through other state agencies. We post everything on social media or send out listserv emails. So I went through that very quickly because I wanted to get through all of that in 15 minutes. We will share both presentations out to everybody. So the presentations have a number of links, so that will make it easier for you to get to these resources and find them. There's a lot of information on our website, and it's, like I said, it's information that can be useful to your customers. So I think the chat has seemed to slow down.
I've been trying to page through it since as you were giving your presentation. It looks like Tom and Jeff have done a great job of answering the questions. Thank you both. Oh, well, there was one more question that came in here from Magdalena. Given the act regulations affected, what infrastructure exists now for truck sellers on the call? Well, as Melissa was explaining, in terms of infrastructure, most of the early generations of truck electrification we're seeing are for vehicles that return to a depot or have fairly short operating range. To be honest, there isn't a huge public charging infrastructure for long-haul trucks. Those are going to be the last category that gets electrified. So no, it doesn't exist yet. But that we don't expect those to be, the major influx of trucks immediately when this regulation starts up. I'm not trying to be facetious. That's just how it is right now. And Melissa, please jump in if I'm speaking incorrectly.
No, you're correct. And there's a number of efforts that are, taking place to get that public infrastructure in place. But it's not like passenger vehicles, right?
Right,
If you
right.
have a large, medium, heavy duty vehicle, you don't want to necessarily go to a charging depot and sit there for, a long time. Those
Right.
um, those owners of those vehicles will do the charging at their fleet. They'll do it overnight because that's where it, makes the most sense. Obviously, as we tackle the long haul trucks, that, is a different model.
Mhm.
The Port Authority is opening up a charging depot for the for electric trucks that do go into there. I believe it will be by the end of the year. They'll be opening up a heavy duty charging depot. And like I said, there's other initiatives happening, but that's not the focus right now. The focus is on, those projects that are more manageable, where there's a number of vehicles that are available.
I noticed someone has in the comments here talked about the ratios that some of the manufacturers are imposing, and said that they have to buy one electric tractor for every 10 diesels. This goes back to, and this has come up a lot yesterday in other conversations. All of the states are facing this. California is facing it. The manufacturers are dealing with compliance with this regulation in their own way. The light duty manufacturers never did this kind of thing. There are lots of different paths for manufacturers to comply. I listed a whole bunch of things in terms of credits and banking and buying excess credits from other manufacturers. They don't have to impose these sales mandates. We in California do not require them to do that. That's how they have chosen to comply with the regulations. None of us are happy about that, and I believe CARB is attempting to have some conversations that in light that this is not necessarily in the spirit of the Clean Truck Partnership we all signed on to. So yeah, we'll see where all that goes. But we're not imposing a mandate that you have to buy so many electric trucks for every diesel trucks you sell. That's how the manufacturers are choosing to spin this.
And I'll just, Magdalena, your question about whether we have had conversations with the New Jersey ports who rely on truck deliveries. Um, like I said, there's a lot of federal funding out there. And so we coordinate closely with the Port Authority, with EPA, and other entities on these funding opportunities. We know that the Port Authority put in a huge application for large climate change and emission reduction projects. We're waiting for EPA to make that announcement. But if the Port Authority gets approved, that will really help the trucking industry working out of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Someone have asked, is the effective date 127 or 125? Well, the effective date for the Act regulation is January 1st, 2025 with model year 2025. The effective date for the Omnibus regulation that requires CARB certified diesel engines is January 1st, 2027 with model year 2027 engines. They are two separate regulations with different applicable dates. And yes, on the last item here, we are aware of private charging infrastructure limitations. As Melissa pointed out, our agencies in BPU are working with the utilities to figure out how to get power where power needs to be. We know it's not a quick and easy thing to occur. But we're really not the lead agency in that. That would be the Board of Public Utilities. But yes, we are aware that you can't necessarily get the power where you need it as quickly as you need it. We understand that.
Also, I should mention that there are two other medium heavy duty charging depots that we know that will be coming online. Zeem Solutions and EV Edison will have larger truck depots in the next year or so. So that will aid in the public charging. Tony will be sending out the presentations to those that attended the sessions. And Magdalena, maybe we can rely on you to also send out those presentations to your members. I know that the Port Authority trucking, heavy duty trucking depot, like I said, will open next year. I don't know the timing of Zeem and EV Edison. I put a link to both of those in the chat. Well, thank you for everybody for attending. Hopefully, it seems like we had less technical issues today. I thank everybody for joining, especially those who joined us yesterday and came back. Hopefully the second presentation is helpful to you. We did want to be responsive to your concerns and assure you that we are, doing a lot. We're not just putting out these regulations, but we are trying to help on all fronts. Feel free to reach out to us at any time with any questions, but we will be updating our web pages. And like I said, sending out the presentations. Hey, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. I apologize for my earlier interruption.
Thanks.